Warframe is a great co-op game, but we don't always have somebody to play with. Whether that be due to bad connection, or because your friends don't play Warframe, or you don't have any friends, or even worse, everybody is asleep because you're in Australia. Yeah, wouldn't want to have that happen to me, right? Anyway, what I'm trying to say is, in this guide, I'm going to help you with all of that by finding you a nice group by showing you the best Warframes for solo players so you can easily beat the game all by yourself. As always, big shoutouts to our generous channel members for making me feel less lonely, and now let's jump right into it. Okay, very quick before we start, one thing, and that is, you might be wondering, especially if you came into the game very recently, is Warframe even playable as a single player? And to that, I can honestly say, absolutely. There is barely any mission type in the game that requires you to play together with other players. There are some that tend to get a bit tricky, but don't worry, we're going to talk about that later in the video. Just saying that if you don't know anyone to play Warframe together with, or you're having a bad connection and that's why you don't find any squads online, Warframe can still be a very great game for you. But with that being said, let's jump into our first contender. And that first Warframe is an absolute gem, quite literally, because we're talking about Citrine. Citrine started out pretty strong, but since then, she got win after win after win. First of all, and that's good news for new players, you can already acquire her very early on in the game. In fact, all the blueprints that you need for her, you will get that out of the mission Tiana Pass on Mars. This is a mirror defense mission, and to be honest, farming Citrine tends to be more on the tedious side of things. It takes quite a bit. So in case you're getting unlucky with the blueprint drops, what you can also do is take the Belric and Rania crystal fragments that you get out of this mission, go to Deimos and talk to Otak, where you can take those crystals and exchange them for the blueprints that are still missing. Still gonna take a bit to farm her, but I would say she's definitely worth it, and there are multiple reasons as to why. First of all, you will never ever struggle with health or energy. With her first skill, she throws glass shards at enemies, and when these affected enemies are taken out, then they have a significantly higher chance of dropping you health or energy orbs. Combine that with Equilibrium, which will turn all your health orbs into energy on top, and you basically have an infinite health and energy printer. Very great also for new players, because the essential Equilibrium mod that you need for it is now a guaranteed reward from the teacher quest, which happens like 1 hour or so into your playthrough, so every single Warframe player watching this video right now will already have everything they need for that infinite energy sustain. But of course, that's not all that Citrine can do. Are you afraid of dying, or are you in the mid-game and struggle with Steel Path difficulty? Well, no problem, Citrine has got you covered. Her second ability, Preserving Shell, gives you up to 90% damage reduction, making you very tanky. Oh, and did I mention that her passive also regenerates health over time? The perfect combination. Even if you're already in the endgame, playing the highest level game modes like Elite Archimedia with enemy level 500 and stuff, absolutely no problem. Throw on something like Mirage's Eclipse as a helmet ability, and once you get into Elite Archimedia, you switch on defense mode to get a fat 75% damage reduction on top of your 90% damage reduction from Preserving Shell, on top of the damage reduction that you get from Adaptation, on top of the damage reduction that you get from your armor. You know what? I think you get what I'm saying right here. You know, Citrine is a very tanky frame, and you will have no struggle with survivability whatsoever. But it still doesn't stop there. Introducing her third ability, Prismatic Gem. This thing is super duper great. It puts down a big gem that automatically inflicts enemies that you're attacking with the 4 base elements, but relatively recently, this thing got an augment which is absolutely great called Prismatic Companion, and that makes it that whenever you have a free-moving companion, then the gem that you put down will not be stationary, but be put on top of your companion so it follows you around, which makes it incredibly convenient to play, especially in those non-stationary missions where you're moving around a lot. And then her fourth ability I think is actually a little bit overrated. Yes, it does stun enemies and it can give you red crits, but the damage that you deal with those crits varies strongly depending on whether those crystals grow out of the enemy's weak spot or just out of their leg or something. If you like the skill, sure, it's a nice addition, but if you're asking me, then I would throw on something different in the 4th slot here. This right here is a generalist build that you can use in pretty much any situation, no crazy in-depth synergies with this one. And this right here would be a very beginner-focused one, specifically because you can get her so early in the game, so if you recently started, this one is for you. And by the way, for every build that I show in this video, if you are still earlier in the game, then you can always replace the primed mods with the regular versions, or even go and use mods at their non-maxed out level, usually like level 7 or 8 for a mod, is enough to make the build work. Just wanted to say that right here at the start. And if you could maybe throw a like at the video, that would also be super duper nice because it always helps me big time with the YouTube algorithm, so cheers so much for your support. But yeah, so much for the sponsor segment, right? Check out our video sponsor Citrine in the description down below. Let's next talk about another Warframe, and that's a little bit of a fun one. That would be Harrow, who made it on this list, not necessarily because he gives special value to solo players, but more because he actively disincentivizes group play. Let me explain. Now, I think we all know Harrow, right? First skill gives you infinite shields, second skill is great for fire rate and reload speed, third skill infinite energy, and number 4 is where the big love with the red crits comes in. The problem with Harrow though is that even though all of these buffs technically apply to him and the team, in order to get them going, Harrow kinda needs to do everything himself, right? Wanna have shields? Hit enemies with your 1 yourself. Wanna give energy to the team? Well, get headshot kills yourself. What about the red crits? Well, you need to take damage yourself. So if you play specifically in a random squad where there is no communication going on, it can very well be that the rest of the team rushes ahead and no enemies spawn near you, or they draw enemy attention away from you, they nuke the map so you don't get any kills. What I'm trying to say is Harrow is pretty inconsistent in group play, so if you want to get the full Harrow experience, I would recommend doing that in a solo run, and then you will harness the full power of one of the best gun buffers in the game. This right here would be an example build that I myself run currently. It uses Cyto9's Evade as a helmet ability to make you invisible, which in and of itself enables other synergies, but with Harrow you technically don't need any helmet abilities. His base kit is perfect just the way it is. But Warframe is still a looter shooter, and that means, yes, we're shooting, but looting is also a big part. And that's what we're going to talk about next with no other than the man himself, Necros. Now, I don't think that Necros needs any specific introduction, right? You have a bunch of skills that are kinda meh, and then you have your third ability, which is the main selling point, giving you a chance to re-loot enemy bodies and body parts. That makes it most players' go-to looting frame. However, one setup that has more and more grown on me over the last couple of weeks is this Necros build right here, which uses Atlas's Petrify as a helmet ability with the Orgaze Augment, because that makes it that when you take out petrified enemies, you get a loot chance increase, which stacks with Necros' re-looting skill, so you're basically creating a win-win situation. Now, of course, Necros is not the only loot frame in the game. Another very popular option would be Korra. A lot of players love her as their go-to looter, mainly because of the Strangle Dome and because he can take out a lot of enemies at the same time with it. The only thing you definitely 100% need to make sure is, if you're going for resource farming, then bring a companion with the Resourceful Retriever mod, which increases your resource gain even more. But okay. All the frames we talked about so far were pretty interesting, so it's time to get boring with the most invincible frame in the game, Revenant. See, I know what everybody is saying. Revenant is boring, Revenant is a cheat code, you just press one button, you can't die, but that is the main selling point. Because I don't know about you, but even on a higher level account, there are these occasional situations where you have an unlucky combination in your Deep Archimedia, or maybe you're tired and you just want to chill, and it is exactly those situations where Revenant really shines, because, you know, you press the second button and then you just can't die. It's that easy. Nothing really I need to add anymore. Yes, playing Revenant too much can be pretty boring, but I still think every account should have a Revenant sooner or later for those specific situations where you really need him. This right here would be a little example build that I'm running. The more strength you have, the more Mesmer skin stacks you get. But of course, you could switch out a lot of mods here to tune him to your personal desires. Okay, right now I want to talk about the most underrated Warframe on this entire list, probably one of the most underrated frames in the game, because it is just incredible how much account value you get out of her, and that would be FairyFrame Titania. See, for many players, at first glance, Titania might look pretty mediocre. You know, another frame that has a special gimmick with flying around with their exalted weapons, dealing some decent damage, but whatever, right? Wrong. Well, of course, you can play Titania as a damage-dealing frame, and she's actually pretty darn decent at that, barely taking any hits because enemies are constantly distracted, and then you also have this big evasion chance going on while you're in your fairy form. But that's not necessarily what I want to focus on here. No. What I want to mention here is her incredible value specifically for those mission types that most players find very single-player unfriendly. I'm talking about stationary defense missions, and specifically for Solo Interception, she is borderline overpowered, and I don't know why not more players talk about it. So let's go over it. First of all, very quick, if you want to play her as a damage dealer, then this right here would be the build that I personally run. I use Zata's Whisper as a helmet subsume and then put blast damage on my Dex Pixia, because the combination of blast and Zata's Whisper kinda sorta gives your Dex Pixia a bit of an AoE damage capability, which is very welcome because, you know, those dual pistols are originally single target only. With Blast and Zata, you can make them multi-target and it's very strong, but where Titania really shines would be, for example, with this solo defense build. What this build does is, it uses an interaction that I once saw in a video from Asian Invasion, where we're gonna use Loki's Decoy as a helmet subsume in combination with your Lantern ability, and then what you're gonna do is cast Lantern and Decoy on the same enemy. Now, the reason why this is so strong is that Lantern has an AoE around it where enemies are pacified, so they're drawn in by the Lantern and they can't attack, while Decoy has a much higher, almost map-wide attraction range, making it so that pretty much every enemy on the map is solely focused on your little Decoy Lantern enemy, and they're just not gonna attack you, they're not gonna attack the defense target. It is an absolute cakewalk and one of my go-to solo defense builds. No matter if it's normal defense or any type of mobile defense, it works for everything. But that is still not all. The real kicker with Titania is how incredible she also performs in Solo Interception. You know, usually that's the one game mode where solo players really struggle, but Titania makes it incredibly easy with this build right here. What I'm doing here is I go for maximum range, so our Lantern ability has a big attraction range, and the good thing about this is that you can have up to 4 different lanterns on the field. It's like tailor-made for interception where you have to defend 4 points, right? All you need to do is lantern one enemy near every interception point, but still so far away that they're not directly in the range of said point. And then whenever enemies run to that point to steal it back from you, they're going to be caught in the lantern AoE and start focusing on just staring at your lantern enemy instead. To be fair, this method is not 100% reliable. There's still always the occasional enemy who manages to break out of your lantern range and hack the point regardless. But remember, you're Titania. You are a very speedy fairy warframe, so whenever there's a hacking alarm popping off somewhere on the map, you can just instantly zip over and snipe away that one enemy. And finally, before we end the video, I want to talk about 2 Warframes who don't really excel in any specific scenario, but they are just incredibly good daily drivers for whichever content you're up against, and that would be Volt on the one hand, as well as Wukong. Now, with Wukong, it's very simple. He's one of the most popular Warframes, and there's really not all that much to him. You have a very strong exalted weapon with 100% follow-through, so you just mow down enemy hordes like it is nothing. You are very tanky and survivable at the same time. And with your cloud form, you're very fast, which is perfect for quick in and out missions like capture for example, but you can also use it for spy missions because while you're in the cloud form, you don't set off any alarms or lasers. Wukong, overall, just a very good frame for most situations, and Volt at the same time fits the same box. He can kinda do it all, right? He has a great speed increase for your quick in and out missions. He can buff your weapons with the augment for his first ability, plus his electric shields if you fire through them. And then speaking of the shields, they are also great for any type of defensive situations because they don't have a health pool or whatever. Even if you're up against level cap enemies, they still block the shots. So yeah, Wukong, Volt, great Warframes for everybody. I'm just gonna put you 2 example builds on screen without much commentary, because given the fact that these frames are so versatile, I don't think there's really one specific build that stands out. You can just go for absolutely everything with them. And if you want to learn more about what specifically Titania can do, then you can do that right here. Another massive shout out to Niels V, Demonoid Cell, Demon Emperor, Emperor Prime, Nostlinux Gaming, Turtlepeer, Ondakanio 2, Skyla Bowser, Mihaki, Socrates the Almighty Rat, Leo Morizaki, Shadow Lockhart, Houndtagas, Patrosader, Boomia1, Mr. Games Plays, Save, Awindai, and all other generous channel members for your continuous support. We see each other hopefully in the next one, and until then, as always, happy Solo Interception.